Hello, everybody. Before the actual episode begins, Justin here, if this is your first time. And I just wanted to let everybody know that this particular episode of the hour does not go with our concept of 1 hour. We actually go, I believe it's 35 to 40 minutes. And it's actually an interview. I had a great chat with the developers behind the people at Illfonic, who are the developers of such games such as Friday the 13th. Predator, Hunting Grounds, and of course Ghostbusters Spirits Unleashed, which just released. So we sit down and really talk mostly about Ghostbusters Spirits Unleashed. And I actually, for this one, you're going to be hearing the audio conversation and going to be getting a little bit of my gameplay of Ghostbusters Spirit Unleashed for this particular episode. Sean, Nadia, Jarrell will be back for episode 4 when we film it. So in the meantime, I hope you enjoyed this great interview that I had with these great folks at Illfonic. And definitely support Ghostbusters Spirit Unleashed. It is truly a great game. You can check out a review here on the channel or at otakusgeeks.com. So thank you for your support, and let's get to the hour. Lady Days. Peace.
Welcome to Otakus Geeks The Hour. Join Justin, Nadia, Sean, Jarrell, and guest panelists as they discuss the latest news, give reviews, and conduct interviews in all things entertainment. Without further ado, let's start the show.
First, if you can just reintroduce yourselves for the audience and tell us a little bit about yourselves and a little bit of background before we get started.
Sure. I'm Charles Brungard, CEO of Illfonic, and we've been around now for, I guess, 15 years. So it's been a while making games, and that's pretty much it. And before that, I worked in the music industry, so little change of pace.
Definitely, that's way different from the gaming industry.
For sure.
I'm Jordan Mathewson. I'm the design director at Illfonic. I've been with these guys for a little over 5 years now. I came on right about when F-13 launched. Worked on Predator and Ghostbusters and Arcadegeddon as well. Now, like I said, it's been about 5 years, and I as well had a past that was a little bit of a pivot. I did YouTube videos, mostly centered around gaming, which got me into game development. So it's been fun.
Oh, it sounds like one heck of a journey. And first, before we begin, just gotta say congratulations, because Ghostbusters is amazing. I still play it to this day. It's an awesome game. And I guess the first question I have, since if Illfonic has had such amazing IPs, of course, Friday the 13th, Predator, and now Ghostbusters, and anyone could take the floor. What was it about the Ghostbusters IP that made you go like, okay, we gotta try to get this and try to make something just different that everyone can really just pick up and enjoy?
Yeah, I think for me it was being such a fan of the original film. So I was always watching it as a kid. I mean, so much so that I went to the local video store down the street by my house, and I think we had it most days rented out to eventually the guy, I think, back then the VHSs were so expensive. They were like $300-400, especially for the video stores to have them and then to rent. And I think he said it probably would have been cheaper to just have my parents buy me that video instead. So huge fan of the original film and really all the films for that fact. But I think for me, at least, it just lent itself perfect for making it into a game. I mean, that scene, the original scene where they fire up the proton packs and they're in the hotel, that to us, I think, is the inspiration for this game, and it just made sense. And I think since seeing that scene over and over again, I always wanted to turn that into a game. Feel free to add, Jordan.
I think Chuck makes the best points out of this. Is right. It's part of the reason is everyone that works at the studio usually has a very big nostalgic connection to a lot of the IPs that we work with, and that's always when it's the best combination, as you have a lot of people that are passionate about the IP and are looking at it in a lens that anyone that would have grown up around these things would be looking at similarly. So we really focus in on the details and the things that we know are going to resonate best from a game perspective. And sometimes, like Chuck says, there's portions that just instantly kind of click and connect when you begin to think about it as this is going to make a fun interactive experience. And once we find something that kind of clicks there, like it works out, and we usually like to target the ones that we have the most the biggest fan base around, as far as like what we as the studio really like to dig into and enjoy.
And one thing I really also did like, just to piggyback off of when you're talking about a little bit, alluded to a little bit the design, is the fact of the detail. It is like when I first got into the firehouse and saw how just to the T everything is like just to the movie, with the pole, the lockers, everything was just there. I was just like, oh my God, they nailed that spirit, even with the music and just the aesthetics of it. Just can you talk a little bit about some of the development processing of first obviously getting the IP, and also really capturing, like, how did you guys capture the aesthetics of the Ghostbusters?
I
think, Chuck, if you want to talk about kind of getting the IP more than anything.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think originally, we were talking to Ghost Corp like probably a couple years before we even started development about the IP, and we, right after Friday the 13th, we're looking at different IPs, and we went to Ghost Corp and basically said, here's our idea for it, and they all kind of looked at it, they're like, wait, why hasn't this been done before? So it was pretty cool to see them really react positively to it. I think for me, at least, I always had a fear of, could we make it feel like a real Ghostbusters experience? How would it work with the particle thrower and the trap, and how all that stuff works together? And I'll kind of let Jordan talk a bit about that, because that was the most authentic thing, but I think the team really nailed it in the process.
And I think you just went right into kind of describing a lot of the things we love to hear, especially from Ghostbusters fans, is that they begin to recognize and kind of layer in all the different things that we went out of our way to really perfect, because of how important we knew it was going to be to any Ghostbuster fan picking it up, as well as, it's a cat. As well as making sure that every detail that's on screen when people are playing begins to connect with them, so that they recognize and really understand that, we're going out of our way to make sure this experience is top notch, not only as a game, but as a Ghostbusters fan type thing that they're going to want to consume, because it's just there's so many cool things that go along with being able to look at an IP and say, like, what are the things that I feel like I would really like to experience if I actually stepped foot in the firehouse, and what would make that feel like, yeah, this is exactly what I imagined it to be. We spent a lot of time thinking of ways to do this, and like the firehouse itself is kind of a big commitment we made early on to, like, this is a hub world menu location that we really want to show is like, this is where your base operations is. Like, we want to make you feel like you're going to work at the Ghostbusters fire station, and that you are going out on jobs to bust ghosts continually, kind of like you would if you were really a part of that, what was happening in the movies. So it did come down to a lot of the looking at that original hotel scene and trying to pick apart all the different portions and times we've seen the particle thrower in use, and the trap and the proton pack, and really find the ways to make sure that that all fit directly into the gameplay experience, in really detailed ways, from making sure that the beam felt like it's really, showing off the power that it needs to be doing when you're firing it, to the way that you're actually connecting with that other ghost and bringing it into a trap and working together as a team to make sure all that happens.
Yeah, and the music was an important one to nail too. I mean, I think, for me at least, I would have, we would have probably just used the whole soundtrack from the original, because it's just so good, and we love it. But it's tough when you make games. We have to make it where people can play and stream it and not have copyright infringement issues. So we wanted to make a soundtrack for the game specifically. And I think Mark Rutherford, our composer, did such a great job, taking inspiration and taking the instruments and really just making it his own, but using a lot of the similar instruments that they had on the original. I mean, one thing that was crazy is we brought Cynthia, it's in the beginning when you see the Columbia logo in the film, and it's almost like a theremin sounding instrument, but it's actually a Ondain's Martineau. I always mess it up, but it's a French, a French like synthesizer from a long time ago, actually. And she's probably one of, I think there's only 5 or 6 left in the world, and I think she owns 3 of them. But it's pretty crazy. She's specializes in this instrument, so we brought her in to kind of get that authentic Ghostbusters instrument sound of the Ondains. So pretty fun.
Especially the fact that you also managed to get Dan Aykroyd and Ernie Hudson to reprise the roles, because minor spoilers, people, but at the beginning of the game, it takes place after the after credits of Ghostbusters Afterlife, where Winston comes in. So when I'm playing this, I'm like, is this the first question? I guess I have a question for this one. Is it canon? Because I was like, is this considered canon? Because the ending of when Winston comes in, and then next thing you know, it's just like, we create our own busters, and then we get to work, and it has, which I was actually surprised about, because when I saw the trailer, I was like, okay, it's multiplayer. I didn't expect a story with it, which was just something that it's rarely done when you actually have a actual story with it. So was that also a design choice, Jordan, to actually also include a mini story with it for the players?
Yeah, we felt it was extremely important, just looking back to all of our experience so far with the IPs that we've worked with, and knowing that going forward, we couldn't not present something that worked in both Winston and Ray. And we felt that was extremely important to get as much elements as we could in there, and speaking to the original actors and making sure that like that was going to give people a good sense of feeling and belonging in the world that they're stepping into, while also challenging that idea that we're able to present and kind of make a story that fits in with a multiplayer experience.
Yeah, and we're tangential to the cinematic, or to the movie timeline, basically. And what was really cool about that is originally we were trying to figure out where this game would lie in the universe, and so they started explaining the 2016 film more as like a multiverse type idea. So we're kind of like, okay, maybe we do our own multiverse. And we kept talking to Ghost Corp, and they weren't necessarily, they liked that idea at first, but then I remember Jason Reitman wanted to take a look at the game, and we had this big meeting all of a sudden with Jason, and the torch was essentially being passed to him to carry on Ghostbusters, and with Gil as well, the writer. And they started saying, okay, we want to see the game and want to see if we want to get you guys in as in the cinematic timeline. And we're like, oh, okay, this is interesting. And so we already had Ernie Hudson and Dan Aykroyd committed to come on. We just didn't know the exact direction we were going to take. I mean, we had ideas, and then they saw the game and ended up loving it and said, okay, you guys, we want you to be in the film timeline. And so that's kind of when Jordan and Jared kind of came up with the idea for kind of carrying on, let's take Afterlife and pick it up where it left off. And the crazy thing is we got to see an early screener of the film, and I just remember we saw the end and the end credits and all that stuff, and they had the scene where he's pulling the Ecto-1 back into the firehouse, and we're like, oh my god, did they like reshoot this for us? Like what happened? Like, this is so awesome. They just set it up perfect. So it ended up working out really well.
I mean, it's just like, it was so phenomenal. And excellent story, by the way. I guess my next question is also was the fact that what was the choice to go first person as opposed to third person?
as far as I mean, Jordan, you could take
Yeah.
this one for the design sake.
So whenever we're approaching the asymmetrical game, it's always an interesting kind of balance to start looking at the different roles that are happening on either side, and looking at the different ways that we can really push and pull the experience that's happening. So for this, we really wanted to focus on the first person element of the Ghostbusters. It hadn't really been done in a way that we felt was putting you in directly into the shoes of a Ghostbuster, and the first person perspective allows us to really make a lot more impactful feel moments with all the equipment, and making sure that it feels like you're more hands-on with it, as well as providing a pretty interesting dynamic between a ghost that has a lot more of a peripheral field of view and vision potential with a third person camera, with the busters who need to be very focused on what's in front of them, as well as be aware that things can come from all around them, and them not be noticing it, which works into trying to incentivize teamwork, as well as just being aware of your surroundings more, while also giving it a little bit of an extra flavor once we can really push some of those visual and auditory elements.
Nice. And also, you just recently last month released a new DLC. Can you guys talk a little bit about that? And if there are going to be, I guess the second question for that will be, will we see any of the more, I would say, well-known villains, such as Vigo the Carpathian, show up once in a while, or either as probably like a boss or someone to catch, or Gozer or Stay Puft?
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot coming up that we aren't necessarily talking about now, but I think if anything, really think of, I think, ghosts that kind of fit the style and of kind of the current ghosts and the way they work. I mean, it was that, a lot of that was a particular design choice. We wanted the ghost to be able to play in a 3D space and be able to fly around. So that kind of helped us home in on what ghost we actually went for at the time. But yeah, we have Muncher that just dropped, and really fun to play with. And then also all the really cool real Ghostbuster cosmetic stuff that came out as well. So a lot of fun dressing up my character with that one.
Yep. New facility map, new implementation of a couple new gadgets. Like, yeah, we went pretty far on this update, and it's added a lot of really fun gameplay.
Yeah, all free too. We wanted to really just support, it was important to us to make this game for a wider audience and a younger audience as well. As a kid growing up as a Ghostbusters fan, I would have loved to have a game like this. Not saying the old Atari one was, or the NES one was bad or anything like that. I enjoyed it as a kid, but technology has come so far. It's we really wanted our 10-year-old self to have a game like this. So it was really awesome. And I think, with that in mind, we wanted to keep all the DLC going forward free. So to allow, anyone to really just pick it up and play and jump back into the main game. So.
And that's something I mean, in the world of DLC, everybody usually charges. And that's why I just gotta applaud you guys for that, because a lot of companies, it's really just kind of really just giving back to your consumers, and for them to just, obviously, like you said, they come back to keep playing, and for me it's just like, and since you alluded to the old school games, I grew up obviously early 90s, born in the 80s, and I played Ghostbusters 2 on the NES, and it's just still to this day still can't beat it. Tried it, just it's so tough. It's so brutal. And then obviously we had the one with which some consider Ghostbusters 3.
Yes,
and then we have
game,
the Ghostbusters, the video game, and now we have your game, which is just, when I heard that I get to create my own character, I was just like, yes, immediately I was like, this is exactly what I wanted. This is where you really, really, truly feel, like I said in my review, this is the Ghostbusters game we're waiting for. This is that immersive experience. And Jordan, just about that, and Chuck, you could chime in with this. What was the decision to have players actually create themselves in this?
I think it goes kind of along the lines of what we've been kind of discussing and calling attention to, is like the ability to step into this as who you are and who you want to be, so that it feels like you're not just kind of taking on the role of somebody. You are the role coming into this, and you're stepping into the firehouse. You click the wanted ad or wherever you saw the job posting, and this is where you're stepping into it. And you have the option to make sure that you create the Ghostbuster that you want, as well as just any time you do have, like, we always enjoy giving players the freedom to create and express themselves in multiplayer environments, obviously, because you're amongst the community members and exchanging those, and it's always fun to look a certain way when you're playing. So I think that's some of the biggest points for it.
Yeah, and it's really fun, I think. I mean, Ghostbusters fans are very diverse, comes in all shapes and sizes and all kinds of stuff. So that's really what we wanted to do, was give that true experience to play who you really want to be. And yeah, I mean, that's with all the knobs and sliders and stuff like that. I mean, we've seen people that can get pretty close to creating themselves too, or with the new Real Ghostbusters stuff, we've seen some pretty impressive characters that have been made as well.
Yep.
that look like some of the cartoons. So the cartoon one,
which is one of my favorite aesthetics, especially with the graphical choice too, because I was able to create myself so closely. I was like, oh my god, it's like the customization is so detailed as well, and just being able to choose your outfits, and like I was telling my friends, like, what I like about it is the fact that the way you have to unlock some of the cosmetics, it makes you keep playing. Like, you want to get certain that's like level 50, keep playing, unlock it, keep playing, unlock it. And the gameplay gets so addictive, especially when you have your friends with you. And then it just gets more challenging depending on certain ghosts. I forgot what ghost it was. It's the one, I think it's the orange one with the long arms. I can't remember the name, but he is just like I remember it was all four of us. We were hitting with the proton, just broke it. We trapped them, broke out of the trap. I was like, wait, how did they just just ran, and he took over the whole place? It was like, oh my gosh. And it's like just the way the gameplay is, especially when your friend is the ghost, it's just amazing. Even with the AI, with the bots, like the AI is so smart, and they help you out when the traps come. Can you talk a little bit about that, Jordan?
As far as the AI in the game? Yeah, I mean, it was definitely something that stood out to us with the other games that we had played, and we wanted to be able to create something, since we were beginning to think about ways to wrap in a narrative around this, is create ways that could be more create a better environment, not only for people that didn't want to play with other people online, but also for making sure that we were adding and keeping if there was anybody that was dropping out late match, or just being able to add another section in there, so that it kind of held the weight of another person, and provided it with a less impacted experience. So we spent a lot of time focusing in on making sure that we were getting the bots to a place, and continually, even after launch, we've been focusing in on with a lot of updates this current DLC, where we tried to make sure that we were listening to the players, as well as interacting and watching a lot of the matches that we're playing, to begin to improve them and get them into a more viable position in online scenarios, as well as any kind of offline scenario. So it just gives a wide range of coverage of just more playability and interaction, as well as some very, like, some of the best, most interesting scenarios have actually happened with bots before, that are just, you see that kind of thing happen, and you're like, I was the only one here, and I got to witness just the weirdest occurrence that these guys managed to solo trap this Slimer. So it's definitely has a lot of great angles to it.
Yeah, the AI has been fun for testing purposes too, because we could kind of just let the game play against each other, and then watch for bugs instead of having to play it all the time. So it's kind of cool.
Yep.
And what would you say, Chuck and Jordan, was your biggest challenge on this project?
I think for me, it was everything coming together to feel like that Ghostbusters experience. I mean, the team did a great job, and I wasn't in the trenches on that, but I always, I knew that I was always concerned, like, this game could go one of two ways. It could either work, or maybe it doesn't work. And I think that Jordan and the team just did such a good job, like, coming up with how that stuff would work. And then obviously it takes a lot. It takes the whole team, animators, artists, engineers, everyone, to really make it feel good and come together. And I think they absolutely nailed it. And it was something that, early on they were working really hard on, but I think it took, a while to come together. That, and balance is always tricky, because you think you get it right, and then you see it get out there in the real world, and you watch everyone play, and you're like, okay, is the ghost too powerful? Is it underpowered? And are the Ghostbusters too good? And it's hard, because when we got all of our reviews of the game, it was kind of all over the place. Some people felt the ghosts were underpowered, some people felt they were overpowered, and so we kind of looked at it and said, actually, this is probably a good problem to have. It means we're probably pretty close to making it right, but it's always that asymmetrical kind of argument that you see, where everyone thinks one's more than the other, and we have to look into the data to actually see that.
Yeah, and I think on my end, like, yeah, that's, like Chuck mentioned, some great points around some of the more challenging elements that we always face going through, this type of game. I feel this time around the biggest challenge that I faced over the entire development of the game was really focusing in on making a complex new kind of loop and idea around the fact that it's like, hey, we're tethering ghosts, we're there's player on player, like, different mechanics that aren't really something you see in a lot of other games, especially when they're all brought together, and making that a user-friendly experience to try and appeal to as many people as we possibly can. Because there's the option where you can go extremely realistic and very hardcore, that creates a pretty steep learning curve. But we really wanted to make sure that this was accessible to a wide range of audience, and younger players, older players, regardless of what their skill level was. We wanted you to be able to pick up the controller or the mouse keyboard and instantly recognize what you're supposed to be doing and how to do that. And it was the trap, the PKE meter, the particle thrower. Like, they're things that, unless you will know kind of what they do based on the movies, but if you haven't seen the movies, like, you need to understand pretty quickly what those things are used for. It's like, this thing is going to tether. It's like fishing for ghosts, and you begin to see the elements that we worked hard to really perfect visually and input wise, to make sure that players were jumping in and able to quickly recognize and understand. And it was really encouraging once we finally started to actually get brand new players, once we were going out to events and seeing people jump into the game for the first time that hadn't been developing it. Once we saw how quickly they were able to latch on and recognize what was happening at any given moment, was extremely rewarding, just because it was definitely the most challenging thing about the project.
And from and Chuck, you could probably answer this. From Friday the 13th, Predator to Ghostbusters now, how would you like you guys have completely grown, and just from the gameplay standpoint as well. Obviously, Friday the 13th is way different than Ghostbusters. So, how would you describe the progression of Illfonic?
Yeah, it's I think we try to learn from each game in the past, what worked, what didn't work, and try to make it better. But also, I think the concepts are also very different, and so we didn't really want to do like a Friday the 13th 1.5 with some of the other games, like just similar concept with sprinkling just a little bit more on. I think Predator was a very different experience. It was more of an action game, first person shooter. F13 it had horror elements too. F13 felt very like horror game. And then I think Ghostbusters, it really, to me, I mean, you have elements that are horror, but it is probably more action, like on a little bit more on the seat of your pants. I mean, the Ghostbusters, the one things in the film is they can get scared, but for the most part, they're very much, they know what they're doing. They're in control. They're fighting these ghosts. And then as a ghost, it's just so fun to be a menace. And I think really kind of learning and making, Predator and F13, we leaned a lot on like violence is a factor, right, in those games. And there's a lot that you could lean on with those, whereas we didn't have any death or anything with Ghostbusters, and we wanted that to, we liked it so much because we're like, here's our opportunity to bring asymmetrical to a younger crowd. But there's a lot of challenges when you kind of do something different, and so I think we just had to learn from the past of what did and didn't work. And I think that's where you see the AI coming into play, you know, the way we did servers, the way we're doing matchmaking and all that stuff. It really, like, all of that from day one we had to do, because, you know, we saw with Predator, you know, people, it's tough, right? Like, people might want to queue as a Predator and it would take 14 minutes to do it. And so we're like, okay, with this game, let's get people in the matches, let's get them playing how they want to play, and then we could kind of worry about linking players up as new players come in, they're kind of filling the AI slot. So really all of that's just learnings from the past, in building on top of what we did in those past games.
And that's one thing I just want to touch base on too. When you were describing, because even in the Ghostbusters, I can just choose the ghost if I want to play the ghost immediately, and then get matched with somebody else, as opposed to like sometimes on Friday the 13th in the early stages of that, it was like kind of a dice game to get
Yeah.
to be Jason. So
Yeah.
that was just like such a, when I saw it, I was like, oh, this is perfect because I could choose either or, and then it just matches according to my settings. So I thought that was just brilliant.
Yeah, one thing, you know, to add to that too, I mean, uh we're noticing because of it that a lot of people are playing this game actually by themselves, which was important to us. You know, we wanted to make this an ultimate game to play with your friends. I mean, it's always more fun in certain scenarios to play with your friends, but the biggest thing we heard from Predator and F-13 was a lot of fans are like, oh, you know, I really like what you guys are doing, but maybe they weren't gamers, maybe they bought the system for the game, maybe they didn't want to play online. You know, with asymmetrical games, when someone's that kind of one monster, they're always worried, they're nervous to go and play. Like I was too when we had Friday the 13th. I was always nervous to play as Jason, just because I'm like, okay, is everyone going to gang up on me? I don't have really a support group to help me when I'm playing. And so that's a lot of what the fans said, is they said, oh, we would love this game, we would try it, but you know, we don't want to play only online. And so that's why we made this game for the fans to be able to enjoy it without being intimidated, or they could learn from it and then play online when they're ready.
Yep. And Friday the 13th was like a test of friendship as well. You
Yes,
Yes.
it was.
found out who your real friends are. I'll never forget. My friend jumped out the window when Jason came in our cabin. I was like, where are you going? He just left
Gotta
me.
save
and I just
yourself
died.
sometimes.
Yeah, the amount
Yes,
of
literally.
times I think we, like, you know, like screwed each other over when we were testing that game was what really kind of, you know, made it really cool. So
Definitely. And I will just have a couple more questions. And this one's for Jordan. When it came to designing, obviously the game mechanics and making sure what tools, obviously PK meter, but you guys introduced some obviously a scanner as well. So what did you guys were able to create some new gadgets, and how fun was that to do?
Oh, I mean, it was extremely fun. Like anytime our design team gets together, and like I have conversations with Jared, our CCO, on stuff like that. Like we really like to look into ways not only to maximize kind of the ways that it interacts with the franchise and like the IP is like, you know, what's going to fit in that direction, like what's going to exist and make sense in the environment that we have, while also paying attention to like, okay, this is a big deal when we begin to like look at these new gadgets, is like you're introducing something that is supposed to make sense but also needs to make sure not to become something that is a problem for gameplay, because there's useful things, but then there's things that can begin to bully, like Chuck was saying, there's things we've learned from our past asym experiences, and that like it's intimidating to play the other side, just because of the fact there's a steeper learning curve, and there's ways that can really become problematic if there's pieces of the gameplay that are not fit for coming together into this ultimate power. So we have to be really careful when we're doing that to make sure we're balancing that out and setting aside that time, so that any time that a new ghost is coming in, they're being affected by these gadgets and these new items, but at the same time, it's not anything that's going to overly dominate them. But overall, it's really fun to kind of find those places to fit those different pieces and see how the gameplay reacts to it, and then tune and tighten it up to kind of bring it into that final stage. But overall, like, all the main gadgets were extremely fun to make. Just thinking of all the different ways that you can interact with them, how the ghost interacts with them, as well as like how do each of the different things go on to be modified by all these different attachments you're unlocking, and the different gameplay that opens up based on what those kinds of things are.
And I would say my last two questions. The first one will be, this is a fun one: favorite Ghostbuster movie and favorite Ghostbuster.
Oh man, this is a tough one. Favorite movie, I think, is definitely the original, the '84 film. Huge fan of it. Favorite Ghostbuster, I think Peter Venkman, maybe. He's so like quirky, or just awesome, right? Like, yeah. Jordan, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, the original, of course. It's just, there's something so magical about it, and I would have to say Egon is my favorite, just because he's like, probably because of the spores, molds, and fungus collection specifically, but everything else about him is great.
I have to agree with it is the original, and I'm gonna go check here. Venkman is always he's my spirit animal. Love this Bill Murray just nails it. It is just the sarcasm, and I would definitely say runner up, believe it or not, it's Ghostbusters 2. I know a lot of people give 2 flack, but I actually love 2. I actually like 2.
I do. I like it a lot too. I mean, for me, I think that was one that I saw in the theater as a kid as well. So I was too young to see the original one in the theater, but part 2 I did. So it always had a special place in my heart. But watching it now as an adult, I do think that the original is just it's great, and just it's crazy, I guess, all the stuff in there that nowadays I'm like, I'm like, maybe this really wasn't a kid's movie back then, but kids gravitated towards it, so it was pretty awesome.
There's always something.
Your wrists are no more.
Yeah, there's always something very magical about kind of going back and witnessing kind of the creation.
I say,
something
you've outlasted the lot of them.
Everything.
Well done.
Cascading all the way down the line to us being able to make a game. Just being able to witness that is just really cool. That's why I really feel kind of that special spot.
And I wonder how the river of slime will work in the game. If you guys decided to do that as a map or the subway, I think if you guys did the subway, that would be like some real horror aesthetics right there.
Yeah.
And I was just, sorry about that.
I was just saying, lots of opportunities.
Yeah. And I have to say, just the final question is for both of you. Any hints of the future that you can give? And Chuck, how many times have people tweeted or requested Nightmare on Elm Street?
An impressive win.
Yeah, quite a bit actually. I think probably at some point. But yeah, I mean, I think as far as the future goes, I mean, this is just the beginning of what we have in store. So just expect you might be able to figure some of it out, but just definitely expect a lot more to come. So we're really excited about that.
More maps, more ghosts, more content.
All right. Everybody, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for Otakus Geeks The Hour. Support the podcast by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. For more on Justin, you can check out imaginativevisions.com. For more on Nadia, you can check out gothamgeekgirl.com. For more on Sean, check out his podcast, It's Chronicles, on Anchor FM. For more on Jarrell, check out his YouTube channel, Red Eyes Entertainment. Later days.